Welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I will be going over the concept of anthro-employability, fancy schmancy name for transforming our humanity into job security. Anthro, of course, referring to person, and employability looking to get hired. Table of contents. First, context, right? What are we talking about? Who am I? What's going on, right? Second, large language. Third, right? Fourth, humanness. And fifth, self-expression. Let's dive in. First is context. So who's presenting and by what authority, and what are we discussing today? So I am Norman. Nice to meet you. I have a technical education. I have a bachelor's in computer science that I got here from UF, and I'm currently pursuing a master's in AI systems, slated to graduate next spring. I hold a leadership position at UF ACM, and previously held one at TEDx UF and Software Engineering Club. I love engineering and the arts. I frequently work at the intersection of both. I have most experience in full stack web development and developer platform technologies, such as your APIs and whatnot. I do voice acting as a creative hobby, and I do audio-visual production in association with that. So video editing, that type of thing. And of course, I have research and career interests predominantly in AI safety, interpretability, and ethics. UF ACM, the organization on whose behalf I'm here today, we are UF's largest pre-professional computer science community. So we focus on guiding, preparing, and engaging with students about their career in computer science. So we really try to give people opportunities to connect via company-sponsored events, resume reviews, interview prep, networking, technical workshops, and of course, design team opportunities to get your personal project game onto a new level. If you're interested, go to uf-acm.com. Now, I have a question for you, my dear audience. What is... Oh boy. Did the Menti work, or was it able to connect, or was it... We're all set. Okay, wonderful. Great. So my question is, what's your specialty, right? What's your major? What's your field? What's your discipline? I promise this is relevant. It's good that we have a relatively small group today, because we can get answers quite quickly, right? So psychology, wonderful. Data science, math. For sure. Great, wonderful. We'll go with that, right? So these are predominantly quite technical disciplines, although psychology is considered a softer science, although I would argue it is very much a science. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The reason I ask for your career distributions is because we are seeing the impact across various industries. So this is a chart that I generated yesterday. I say generated with caution. AI was not used to generate this. I processed data from layoffs.fyi, the internet's predominant website for tracking layoffs in the tech space, and among others, by industry. So here we see data on tens, if not hundreds of thousands of layoffs by sector after the launch of ChatGPT. Right? So the largest being the consumer technology sector, the hardware technology sector, the retail technology sector, finance, marketing, transportation. I wonder why. Let's keep this graph in the back of our minds as we move forward, and talk about the types of AI systems at play. So what is happening to cause that? What AI systems are involved? Well, first we have analytical AI systems, right? They identify patterns and provide insights or recommendations based on them. And we have generative AI, which creates new content, text, images, video, audio, etc. Analytical AI is predominantly used for diagnosis, and generative AI is used for synthesis. Technically speaking, you could consider Gen AI a special case of analytical AI, but for our purposes, let's consider them both as separate parts of the same whole, right? Which are AI systems. Here's a graph, we're going to be seeing a lot of graphs today. I'm glad we have data science people in here to appreciate the graphs. So this is a graph from the World Economic Forum. They did a future of jobs report in January, and they estimated the growth in relative concentration of AI tech by industry since 2016 through 2024. Crucially, all of these are seeing massive amounts of growth. Right, where AI technologies are pervading these spaces. We have technology, information, and media experiencing 400%, right, growth in terms of AI tech. Education following shortly, like behind that, with just under 300%. Professional services, financial services, utilities, manufacturing, that type of stuff. So we see this is now the intersection, right, of something that we would consider to be predominantly like tech heavy, but now like it's going somewhere else. Like education, yes, ed tech is a very big thing, right? I'm using Google Slides after all, right? We're doing a digital presentation today. But one would not think, okay, how can a teacher use AI? Well, evidently the market trend is saying there must be a way. But here's some more pertinent statistics to our employment. After all, that's the topic of today. So first of all, from 2025 to 2030, 73% of employers plan to accelerate the automation of processes and tasks. 41% of employers plan to downsize their organization's workforce due to AI. Whack. And 50% of employers believe a barrier to AI adoption will be a lack of skills to do so. So that means the other 50% doesn't care if they don't have the skills to adopt AI, they will anyways, right? So I present these somewhat facetiously because, of course, any statistics should be taken with a grain of salt, but they are gathered very legitimately. Again, this is still the World Economic Forum, and by no means do I mean to make light of the situation. As a matter of fact, this should be an indicator. This should really be something that we pay attention to because 41% of employers planning to downsize their org because they want to use AI in the place of the workers is a very significant development that affects all of us. Right? So second, I want to talk about large language, right? Following that, of course, we think large language models, but we're not talking about large language models today. We're talking about the language that describes the capabilities of AI in the workforce. What words are used when companies talk about integrating AI? Well, I want to ask you first, right? What words come to mind when you think of AI? Oh boy, this is a fascinating little. Hopefully that works. What words come to mind when you think of AI? I wish there were a way to integrate these two like technologies, but we have to deal with that. If you don't have three words, that's fine. Wonderful. Diagnostics, automation, analysis, generation, automated machine learning, robots, analysis, chat GPT. Yes. Generation, wonderful. Neural networks. Very good. It seems, again, we have a technical crowd predominantly, and that shows that we're thinking about these technologies very, very technically. I want to present three things from perhaps the more financial side of things. How can we leverage those words that you just described, but frame them in a way to justify the trends that we see? So what would an executive say about AI? Well, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper. AI costs less to deploy than paying a person the salary for the same job, right? Or not a salary. Of course, that's also a legitimate form of labor. Faster, right? AI is faster because it can produce bodies of work in minutes, which would take a person days, weeks, months, even. And of course, it's smarter, right? It's totally smarter than most people. It's learned for more material than a human could consume in a lifetime, right? So it's cheaper, it's faster, and it's smarter. These are the three words that have driven outsourcing in the past, right? To other sources of labor. But I want to examine each of these words sequentially. Cheaper, right? So I mean, it's cheaper, right? So input and output prices per token is the data that we can look to analyze this trend. So this is from Artificial Analysis. It's a site that compares a lot of statistics about large language models. And as you can see here, the price per million tokens, and I know that doesn't mean too much right now. We'll get into a reference frame very shortly. But keep in mind, the price per 1 million tokens is, for some smaller models, close to 10 cents on the dollar, right? But for larger models, of course, as we get to Claude 3.7 Sonnet, per million input, it's $3, and per million output, it's 15. That's a trend that is fairly consistent across the more sophisticated and larger parameter models. One trend that you might see is along this x-axis, you might see like 8 billion parameters, right? There's 32 billion, 70 billion, et cetera. Larger models are more expensive. Why? Well, larger models typically are quote unquote more capable, as in, and that makes sense. They've learned from more data. It's a reasonable assumption. But okay, how about a reference frame? What is 1 million tokens, right? What is that? Well, 1 million tokens compared to words in literature is massive, is what it is. So an average novel is from around 70 to 100,000 words. Okay. War and Peace, the longest novel ever written by a person, is just under 600,000 words, right? And 1 million tokens at a conversion rate of 1 token to 3/4 of 1 word is 750,000 words, or just over 7 average novels. Crazy, right? Well, let's do some basic arithmetic. $5 per million input tokens plus $15 per million output tokens would be the cost to roughly, and this is being optimistic, to write and revise 100,000 words, or perhaps a lot more, right? Because we're generating 1 million output tokens with GPT-4o according to the price that we saw in that chart. The reason I say that this is generous is because this would assume in order to get your 100,000 words, you put in about 750,000 words, which is, of course, a very disproportionate balance. So the actual cost of this might be a lot cheaper. Faster. AI is faster, so much faster than us, right? It has to be. Again, we look at the output speed. This is the holy chart, right? Output tokens per second, where higher is better. Thank you again, artificial analysis. So our most advanced models, these are proprietary weights, although not lagging very far behind at all, are open source, or at least open weight models from Meta, which makes Llama, excuse me. Output tokens per second, higher is better. 246 tokens per second can be generated by Gemini 2.0 Flash. Yesterday, Google came out with Gemini 2.5 Pro Experimental, which is very new. It's like I wasn't able to generate the chart in fast enough time, but alas. And then, of course, we see like the most common, GPT-4o, 209 output tokens per second, et cetera. Right. And this varies across providers. You don't just go to chatgpt.com. You can hit the API directly. And if there's the infrastructure to load that, et cetera, those speeds are where this can get a lot higher. Right. But I digress. We're seeing roughly, definitely along the chart here with models that have better compute infrastructure, output tokens can get easily around or even above 100 per second. So again, faster. Well, let's do some more arithmetic. 100,000 words times 1.33 repeating, of course, tokens per word divided by 209 output tokens per word, output tokens per second, right? Divided by 60 seconds a minute gives us about 11 minutes in which time we can write 100,000 words, an average novel, right? With GPT-4o as of March 2025. $20, 11 minutes. Smarter. I mean, it has to be smarter than us, right? Here's another graph, right? Look at this graph, guys. We see this artificial analysis intelligence index, and it incorporates 7 evaluations. If you're familiar at all with large language model evaluations, this takes into account your most popular ones for math, reasoning, and coding. And et cetera, knowledge as well. So these are the evaluations that have them taking the SAT, taking the bar exam for law, that type of stuff. So this is an aggregate measure. These numbers are a bit arbitrary if you want to look more into the thing. As with any slide where I share external information, there's a source at the bottom. But I digress. We have a 66% or 66 score, where O3 mini, presumably, right, where 100 would mean human level intelligence. Presumably, that at least that's the only scale that we can work off of right now, right? But these are just about halfway there. So middle of the pack, 50% GPT-4o, March 2025. You can see our reasoning models, right? Or at least our chain of thought models, DeepSeek R1, O1, and O3 mini. These are the ones where they say like thinking ... and then they think more. Those score higher on an intelligence index. So this means, of course, that AI can reason, right? And of course, there's a trio of deep research products that are available. We see OpenAI's deep research, which was published in February 2025, I believe, 2025. I can't remember, but yes, 2025. Gemini, and that was published actually in December 2024. So Google did that first for the record. And of course, Perplexity, which launched their version of deep research after OpenAI as well in February 2025. So these deep research products allow us to really dive into concepts as if you were some sort of specialist in research, right? On the websites for these products, the companies explain, okay, this is for the high level intellectual work. This is where you need to really dig deep. You need to synthesize sources. You need to synthesize information from sources, and then you cite them. We got you. AI can do it for you. It's so smart, right? Cheaper, faster, smarter, right? Right, everyone? I just showed you a bunch of graphs, right? I mean, they have to be cheaper, faster, and smarter because of the graphs. The graphs can't lie to us, right? Is there any evidence against AI's efficiency in cost, time, and intellect? Well, let's see. It's cheaper, right? Right? Well, here are the costs. Here are the costs. We have environmental costs, right? The damage done to the environment and its financial repercussions. And of course, we have human costs. So the damage done to people and its financial repercussions, right? So the environmental cost, and I threw this in here as a bit of an esoteric piece. Who here is familiar with Ractor? Just me. So what Ractor is, it was actually one of the most prominent chatterbots. The first chatterbot you may have heard of is Eliza, which was developed in the 1960s by Joseph Weizenbaum at MIT. After that, there were experiments in natural language processing. Ractor was one of them. And Ractor was actually the first chatterbot that could generate at scale a lot of seemingly poetic or at least somehow inspired human-sounding literature. So much so that it produced a book, right? So the first book published by, or first book written entirely by a machine was "The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed," which is like a series of poems. For those on Zoom who didn't see, I said poems in quotation marks, right? Ahem, quote, quote, quote. More than iron, more than lead, more than gold, I need electricity. I need it more than I need lamb or pork or lettuce or cucumber. I need it for my dreams. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'll let you do that because we're talking about the environment. Here's a video on how AI and data centers impact climate change. Hopefully this plays with sound.
Climate Watch, we're focusing on the surging demand for energy in the U.S. It's growing significantly for the first time in decades. Experts say it's forecast to hit record highs both this year and next, straining the nation's aging power grid and creating more planet-warming emissions. A big part of the demand is from a growing number of data centers across the nation. And listen to this, from the rise of artificial intelligence. Senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy traveled to Utah to learn about the race to find enough electricity to power the future.
And these fans are cooling our data centers.
On a rooftop near Reno, Nevada, Amanda Peterson-Corio wanted us to see these whirling fans. They're cooling these endless rows of servers and miles of cable, the arteries of the internet inside a Google data center.
It's hard to imagine that there is a physical location where the internet lives, but this is it.
Is this everything from like somebody's doing a Google search, somebody's watching a cat video, and that's all coming through here?
Absolutely. It's all that and more.
As the global head of data center energy, her job is to find more juice to keep the company's power-hungry machines humming. A single data center can use as much power as 80,000 US homes.
It's going to take innovation to really think about how are we going to scale this faster to keep up with the pace of growth.
The nation's roughly 2,700 data centers are mostly run by big tech firms and consumed more than 4% of all electricity in the US in 2022. That's projected to more than double to 9% by 2030. It's already taxing the nation's aging power grid, and the demands of artificial intelligence are just beginning to grow. A ChatGPT query uses nearly 10 times the electricity of a typical internet search.
Is this amount of electricity use sustainable?
It's a real challenge. As we look to the next decade, those demands continue to grow. And the real challenge is figuring out how can we do this in a way that meets our climate goals.
Google's planet warming emissions rose by 13% last year and have jumped nearly 50% since 2019. The company has invested heavily in wind and solar and says 64% of the time its operations run on clean energy. But when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, data centers still rely on dirty fossil fuels that contribute to climate change. So big tech is now scrambling to bring more clean power to the grid.
We can develop large projects that will really move the needle on the electric grid and climate change.
Tim Latimer is CEO of Fervo Energy, which is partnering with Google to boost geothermal power, harnessing carbon-free heat from deep inside the earth.
How far down are you drilling here? Right now, we're at about 12,200 feet. And by the time we get there, the temperature is over 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right now, geothermal accounts for less than 1% of electricity in the US, but Fervo wants to change that.
How big of a solution can this be? Yeah, we think that geothermal could be as much as 20% of the US electricity grid.
Google plans to use Fervo's geothermal power to help run its Nevada data centers, and eventually others around the world, aiming to eliminate its use of coal and gas by 2030.
We need something that has that reliability that works 24/7 to get us all the way there. So when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing, this thing's still cranking. The earth is still hot.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Ben Tracy in Utah.
There we go. And I did, when I was designing this presentation, have the choice to omit that last part. I don't want to frame this as being entirely hopeless, right? On the contrary, a lot of good effort is being done to solve this problem. That said, 80,000 homes for one data center multiplied by an order of 2,500 is a lot, right? And how much water is flowing, right? How many new data centers are being constructed? So let's keep that in mind. There is a significant environmental cost.
In our series Climate Watch.
Oh, there we go. Next is the human cost, right? So the human cost, again, is the damage done to people, which historically has been a little bit challenging to quantify, especially with technologies as abstract as artificial intelligence systems. However, we are trying. Since 2015, 869 AI incidents have been analyzed and 4,009 reports created by the MIT AI Incident Tracker team. And they reveal a staggering number of violations for privacy, data security, misinformation, malicious actors, AI system safety, etc. On the right, actually, you can see here that the category 4, which is malicious actors, since 2024, right? So like a risk classification of 2024 incidents, just under 40% of those were malicious actors, meaning people or organizations that willingly, right, did something to hurt other people because this technology is so accessible. Now, hurting other people is very abstract, and we may get into more comments on what that implies. And indeed, the total cost, as in financially speaking in dollars or any other currency, of AI incidents has not yet been documented. I'm sure it will. But for reference, the global average cost of one data breach is about 4.8 million US dollars. How many data breaches have we heard about in recent times? Right, some food for thought. But it's faster, right? It's still faster, right? It's still much faster than people are, right? Well, let's take a quick example here. Some of us may be familiar with this term, certainly in the recent past. How many have heard of vibe coding? Fantastic, thank you. Right, so vibe coding is actually a term coined by Andrej Karpathy from OpenAI, formerly, I believe, and it's basically when you let your AI just code. You just let it happen, and you just execute code. So what's happening is we're having a lot of like no code or very low code builders go on and build things. So I'll read this out loud for so that all of us can see. So can hear. My software as a service was built with Cursor, very no code AI code generation tool. Zero handwritten code. AI is no longer just an assistant, it's also the builder. Now, you can continue to whine about it or start building. P.S. Yes, people pay for it. And then shortly following, the same poster says, guys, I'm under attack. Ever since I started to share how I built my SaaS using Cursor, random things are happening. Right, maxed out usage on API keys, people bypassing subscription, creating random things on database. As you know, I'm not technical, so this is taking me longer than usual to figure out. For now, I will stop sharing what I do publicly on X. There are just some weird people out there. Now, you may interpret from my, from my humorous reading of that I am ridiculing this person. But I do want to note very seriously that the vulnerabilities that are exposed by this type of behavior are not a joke. And it, frankly, partially at least, lies on the companies that provide this technology to provide disclaimers to people who are excited to build something. Because Leo Jr. 94 underscore just wanted to build a software as a service product, right? There's nothing bad about that. As a matter of fact, I view this as this user being more of a victim of a system of these products not being comprehensive enough about their risks, rather than a bad actor specifically. Here is the outcome. So here's some flaws that were investigated. Thank you to user DY0GU on Reddit. So all of the API keys were hard-coded. The environment variables were hard-coded, right? What else? No authentication on the API side, only front end, right? And then some particular details about network security. So this is serious. So if we're launching a software as a service, specifically if we're scaling to any number of users, even if it's just like a dozen users, but especially far beyond that, right? Because no one really starts a software as a service company or product saying, yeah, I think I'm good with having a dozen users. That's all right. You want this to work for thousands, tens of thousands of people. But these risks are fundamental, right? And they make the product untrustworthy. Sure, it might be fancy and fully automated, and you don't need to hire software engineers to work on it, but that's suddenly you've gotten faster at creating something that doesn't work. Stay with me now. Content creation. All of us are exposed to the endless cycles of scrolling on Instagram, scrolling on TikTok, and various other forms of social media. What does it mean when content can be created as easily as it can with AI tools? For comparison, this is, again, a slightly unclear chart, I understand, for people in the audience. But this is a demonstration of the filmmaking process. So this is how a movie is made. You have the pre-production stage where, and I will, for the sake of clarity, go through this, right? Because I do really think that this is important. And no worries about understanding the complexities. We're focus on the number of people and the amount of time involved. So we have the script being written. We need a writer, right? We need at least one writer, right? Preferably someone who can also proofread the script. Maybe that's 2 people. Maybe that's 3. Financing secured. So we need some form of investor, right, to pay for this thing. This could be an organization or it could be an individual benefactor, right? So I'm already running out of room on my hands. Cast and crew hired, right? So if this is a one-person production and one person is financing this and doing all that, great. But especially if you're looking to create something of larger scale, like an advertising campaign, right? Now you need the cast and crew. So that might be dozens of people. I'm out of fingers on my hands, right? Next, locations scouted and secured. You need to go somewhere physically, right? Or at least you need someone to go somewhere for you and find it and get permission to film there, etc. Next, sets and props. If you have something that you want to add, then you need people to secure that. Maybe you need some costume design, right? Wardrobe designed and made. Again, you have specialists, people who sew, who knit, who create things, who can 3D print a model and then like get that out for you. These are jobs that people do for film productions, not just like stage plays, right? Production schedules need to be created. So you need someone managing all of this. I'm past like, this is probably now 24 people, and this is just pre-production. We move to production and we see the set needs to be prepared. So people need to be there and like clean everything, set everything up. Electrical, lighting, and sound. These are engineering positions, frankly. So there's a sound engineer, there's a lighting engineer, right? There might be an electrical, perhaps not an electrical engineer like designing circuits for a particular film, but I digress. It might be someone with electrical knowledge to make sure that you don't fry whatever thing that you got going, especially if it's like a pyrotechnics show. Actors' makeup and hairstyle. So makeup artists, hairstylists. These are people that are being employed for this production, right? Their time is being compensated. Camera angles, scenes need to be rehearsed. So you have the actors and then you have a director, right? This is now we're like what, 40 people, maybe 50 people, right? Video and audio needs to be recorded. You got the boom arm, you got the microphones, you got the headphones, you got everything. All right, great. Finally, we make it to post-production where we got to edit this thing. We got to make all the raw footage make sense. So you have like a video editor, you have an audio engineer, right? Who's like mixing and mastering this type of thing. Think about like a music video. You got to make sure that the lips are in sync with what, the song. Visual effects, sound effects, musical score. You might have a musician, especially if this is a music video, right? You have whatever artist making the actual music. Presumably you would have the music before you make the music video, but I digress, right? So audio tracks mixed, and then finally, when everything's combined, then you get it approved or otherwise reviewed. But this can be very easily a scale involving dozens and dozens of people. Now, content creation versus physically versus with just AI. With AI, you can just generate text. You generate images, right? You generate scenery or characters. And then you generate the sound, you generate the music and the voiceover, etc. And then you generate the video, and hey presto, you got a movie. You didn't have to pay any of these people. You didn't have to rely on their experience. You didn't have to do anything. All you had to do was sit at a computer for, I don't know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. And sure, if you care and you iterate thoroughly, maybe there might be some artistic integrity in this process, but I digress and maintain that this does not even come close to anything that a group of motivated and compensated people could produce. So in effect, you're paying for something that does make something like faster, yeah, but it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. So what's the quality of an AI generated video? Well, here's an advertisement from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, real magic, everyone. Real magic. Fascinating that they chose those words because, of course, this was, again, confirmed to be an all AI production. So, of course, Coca-Cola has faced backlash online over an artificial intelligence made Christmas promotional video that users call soulless or devoid of any actual creativity. Why? Why can we make these claims? When someone has a product that is human made, it is a reserved judgment of the audience to criticize it. Criticism is valid because people have preferences. But notice that the criticisms for any human-made film might be, oh, this is really poor production quality. I don't think that the actors are acting very well. I don't like the way the story is written. I don't like the visuals, blah, blah, blah. But it's never at the scale of, well, I mean, granted, never is a very strong word. It can be soulless, right? Especially if it's made as an afterthought. But these are very heavy accusations, right? Devoid of any actual creativity. So what does this mean, right? This means that, well, first of all, good things take time. It's faster to produce what is colloquially known as slop, right? AI generated content, but not create anything artistically meaningful, at least not to the perception of a much wider audience. It is outside of the scope of this presentation for me to argue whether or not AI generated images constitute art. It is, of course, my personal belief that they do not. However, I've tried to be as non-biased in constructing these arguments. So what can we draw from? Not my personal judgment, but again, the judgment of audiences. These are real people giving real feedback. They do not like it. Second, you don't know what you don't know, right? So using tools to do the work for us does not make us better at the profession. So the person who tried to use Cursor to build their software as a service, did they become a better programmer because they used AI to do the work for them? Not necessarily. You could argue that they're becoming a better programmer because they faced the consequences and are learning from the fact that it made a lot of mistakes. But simply extending your capacity to produce more faster doesn't make you better at doing the job. And then third, 0 to 100, but not far beyond. Right, we saw the software as a service. It's a great prototype, a word us engineers are familiar with. Prototype. Proto meaning, before, and type, I won't get into etymology. But point is, it's a concept. It is a proof of concept. But when we start selling proofs of concept as finished products, we assume that seemingly coherent, scalable quantity implies reliable, scalable quality, but it doesn't. So we must exercise caution. Fine, Norman, fine. Like, okay, but it's still smarter, right? It's still smarter than people, right? Well, Google's AI overviews were under fire last year when they were released for giving dangerous and wrong answers. So it can give false, misleading, and dangerous answers for Ars Technica rights. Reportedly tells users to jump off a bridge and eat rocks. My. Right? Glue-topped pizza and zombie presidents. What else we got? AI generated. AI overviews in search hit with user complaints. Right? And actually, this is very fun. I'm very glad that this happened to me. If you can believe me, and I hope you do, this is a photo in which I am in, so the source is me, where me and a friend were at the rights union in this very establishment. And we decided to ask Google, we were talking about it. We were like, what's the world's most popular cheese? And we got two different answers. So it says mozzarella is the most popular and cheddar is the most popular. So which is it, right? What are we doing? Well, of course, it's trying to summarize multiple sources. And an AI model is inherently non-deterministic, right? Although, it could be argued that the model architecture itself can be deterministic. The outputs are probabilistic. So I will say, I should correct myself there. But again, it is a distribution, right? It's not a certainty. And a lot of alignment research, you may have heard that word, is about getting a certain output guaranteed, because that's important to the idea of truth. Because what is true here? Well, it is true that mozzarella and cheddar are popular in the world, but which is the most popular is an objective fact, not a perspective. And therefore, we can't reliably use Google's AI overview to get truth, but that's what it's designed to give us. Hence, it's not very smart, at least not what we can extrapolate. Let's look at a few more examples. New York City AI chatbot encourages business owners to break the law. Yikes. So this actually said that business owners can, quote, take a cut of their workers' tips, fire workers who complain of sexual harassment, and serve food that had been nibbled by rodents, all of which are untrue categorically and horrible. Second, Apple has urged to withdraw out-of-control AI news alerts. So some of you may be fortunate enough to have an iPhone that has the new Apple Intelligence like feature set, or at least it's enabled. So at some point, there was an AI summaries feature. And that summaries feature generated summaries based off of your notifications. Well, it summarized notifications sometimes really poorly. When someone, then this is just one example from Reddit, although there are many, many more. Again, this is anecdotal evidence, so take it with a grain of salt. Someone received a message, I think, and then they said, sorry, I was very drunk and went home and crashed straight into bed. The AI summary was drunk and crashed, which is horrible, right? And it's also untrue, which is why it's so horrible, right? Next, let's move to analytical AI. So the past two have been generative AI systems. This is now an analytical AI system. Amazon's discriminatory AI recruiting tool, this is from 2015, a machine learning tool generated a more negative view of resumes that used the word women's and was less likely to recommend graduates from women's colleges. I think that speaks for itself. I mean, that's just systemic discrimination, which is not fair for applicants. Of course, I will say that was in 2015. I hope that measures have been taken to address that. McDonald's ends AI experiment after drive-through ordering blunders. So this is now a mix of analytical and generative, right? Where we have an analytical system transcribing what a person is saying in the drive-through, and a generative system giving a speech output, right? So one TikTok video in particular featured two people repeatedly pleading with the AI to stop as it kept adding more chicken McNuggets to their order, eventually reaching 260. I cannot eat that much. Perhaps someone can. But indeed, for someone who, imagine someone who couldn't afford it. Imagine someone who wanted to play around, right? If this were a human operator, of this, right? If there was a human clerk, right? They could reasonably detect like a level of sarcasm, like, you want 260 nuggets? Right? And you're like, yeah, I think like I can I got it. And they're like, okay. And then of course, like you can detect something. If you want to be funny, which I mean, it's a drive-through, be respectful, just order your food and get on your way, right? But still, fine. Even if it was a joke, which again, according to this context, it wasn't. You can joke more reliably with people, but with a system, right, that is trying its best to, as objectively as possible, detect something. Maybe there's some sort of vernacular issue. Maybe it was a language issue. Maybe there was a language barrier. Can you imagine the horror if you are someone who's like English may be your second language, and you're just trying to order like one thing, and you get this? Like it's terrifying. And of course, lastly, you may have seen this as well. This is from Google's generative AI image tool. This was also last year. It made very offensive historical images where the prompt was a German soldier from 1943, and it just generated various populations effectively cosplaying as Nazi soldiers, which is again horrible, right? Because on multiple counts, right? Because if we do talk about historical accuracy, this was not historically accurate, right? And second of all, in terms of offense, like this is a very sensitive topic. Perhaps there should be some regulation about generating this in principle, as in maybe don't generate like images of soldiers, right? This is like a regulation issue. But all of this can be wrapped up into a central point that says by Joseph Weizenbaum, the creator of Eliza, the first chatbot of all time, right? I had not realized that extremely short exposures to a relatively simple computer program could induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. Normal people. Normal people. What can people do that AI can't? We've been talking today a lot about like, okay, AI can do this, AI can do that. I hope that my arguments have said that, okay, well, maybe AI can't do a lot of things, right? At least not as they are presented to us by those who are trying to sell the systems to us, because of course it's to their advantage that they market them as effective. Humans. Well, here are some things only humans can do. First, we can try. We have the will to attempt tasks and undergo valuable journeys on the way to their execution. So education is a very valid example of that. All of you in this room, presumably, have chosen to undergo a journey to get a degree, right? An AI can't decide to get an education, right? It's a silly thought. It can't decide to do anything in that context because it has no stakes, right? There's no way that it can conceptualize that, at least not from the same first-person perspective that a human can. Second, we can fail and grow. So we have lived experience that informs our decisions and can have happy accidents. So lived experience is everyone in this room at some point was a child. Everyone at some point in this room was hungry, right? Maybe we were in love, right? Maybe we got our hearts broken. Maybe we tried really hard and things didn't work out. Or maybe something happened that we were really excited about because it was like a massive development. For me, that was like getting into this master's program. I was like really excited because that was like, to me, a major accomplishment. It was something that I felt proud of, proud, right? Feelings. All of these are tied with our experiences. It's something that we can recognize. AI cannot have that. They're at least not provably. And certainly it can't make happy accidents. It can't make mistakes along the journey. Perhaps there's something that we forfeited at one point in time that actually, on the other side of the story, allowed us to get something better as well. So that is a very important thing. Again, AI's only objective in the context of the systems that we're talking about is generating output. If it has generated output, it has succeeded. Whereas if we have generated something and it's not valid for whatever circumstances, we have failed. But AI can't fail. But why does it matter to us that we fail, right? Why do we feel bad? Well, because we care about something. So we have a capacity for empathy based on the shared human experience, right? So what that means is that effectively, each person has an individual path through college, but each of us is doing college together. So we can relate. And we're here because we all can more or less agree that an education is important. We care about having an education for a variety of reasons, right? And of course, you can extrapolate that for whatever you want. Even if it's like strictly financially motivated. There's no like moral judgment here. Any explanation is valid, but there is an explanation, right? There is a reason why you care. And because you care, you can say no. You can say, actually, this is not what I want. I don't agree with this. I have a personal perspective. AI cannot have a personal perspective. You may have heard outputs like, as a large language model, I blah, 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 right? And hopefully that is in alignment with some like ethical regulations. But I digress. We have an intuition. And sure, an AI model can have intuition, but it's only really according to what it's prompted to do or any fine-tuning that's been done internally. Effort is associated with trying, right? So I'll skip the Menti in service of time, but this is like a yes or no question. So raise your hand if you believe if someone writes all their code by hand, are they a programmer? Right? Pretty unambiguous. I believe that was 100%. Yes. Now, is someone who uses AI to write all their code, are they a programmer? Raise your hand if you think so. Valid, right? We have a few perspectives who believe yes. And again, those are in support of people like our friend who we examined, right, face, alas, the consequences of an incomplete tool. But the predominant perspective here is that, well, there is more legitimacy in calling someone a programmer if they wrote all of their code themselves. And finally, is a programmer a software engineer? Not necessarily. Because just because you can code, it doesn't mean that you can engineer software. There's more layers behind it. Now, failure and growth. And again, this is just a yes or no. I'm not asking anyone to share. Can you recall a time that failure motivated personal or career growth? I think like pretty unambiguously, like the majority of people can say yes, right? And again, on the topic of happy accidents, what do we think all of these things have in common, right? All of these things were accidents. Velcro, super glue, penicillin, Post-it notes, Play-Doh, right? These were some successful inventions made by accident, right? And AI cannot have an accident. It can just generate an output that is nonsense, right? Defiance. Now, my question is, in your past experience, has AI been very cooperative to your prompts? As in, like, even if you give it like something, has it more or less followed your instructions? Has it like given what you asked? For me, like we can say most of the time, we can say, but on average, yes. And indeed, a Stanford study shows that the most recent version of ChatGPT passes not only a rigorous Turing test, right, but it diverges from average human behavior chiefly to be more cooperative. So it operates on the affirmative rather than the negative. So in order for AI to say, actually, I don't want to do that, it takes a lot of energy, right? I would encourage you to look into AI jailbreaking if you're if you're curious about more information in that. And indeed, following that, another quote, a no uttered from the deepest conviction is better than a yes merely uttered to please or worse to avoid trouble. Now, from Mahatma Gandhi. So, of course, we can't prove that AI is just saying yes to avoid trouble, because, of course, what trouble can an AI be in? This is a nearly philosophical question even, right? But we can say that it provably it only has the personality or convictions that we assign it to have, which means that it doesn't have an individual perspective like a person does. And of course, we have the capacity to care. This is a model of Ikigai. Now, in the context of work and also in the Western context. Since the publication of this diagram originally, Ikigai has been written about and explored in many different ways. What you're seeing now is the Western interpretation, specifically from like a labor-focused, work-focused perspective. How many of us have seen this diagram before? Fantastic. One person, two people. Great. I'm glad that I can share this with you. So Ikigai in this version is the reason for being. So it is the intersection. And now here we get to the employability part. I know there was a lot of buildup, but this is it. This is the humanness. This is the anthro-employability part, the stuff beyond your skills. So what you love, what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. At the intersection of these various items is not just purpose, but also opportunity. So at the intersection of what you love and what you're good at, you have a passion, right? You might love music and you're good at playing an instrument. You're passionate about playing piano, right? What you love and what the world needs, right? You may love the environment or Earth, and what the world needs is more people who do that. So you're passionate about environmental conservation. What you can get paid for and what the world needs. Well, this is a vocation, right? So this might be something that you do, perhaps not just your, like a profession is different from the vocation, because of course that's like what you're good at and what you can get paid for versus what the world needs and what you can get paid for. A vocation may be quote unquote thankless as in you may have like a struggle to stay motivated, but the profession, in theory, it pays more consistently, it pays well. So, but you may be comfortable, but you may feel unfulfilled. So all of these wrap up into the center, right? Ideally, we want to be there. So the center is ikigai, where you feel fulfilled, you feel financially satisfied, you feel like your work is impactful, and you feel motivated. Now, in the interest of time, I won't like examine. There was a portion of this where it was like I was going to ask you guys like what's your ikigai, but in the interest of wrapping up, if you want, like take a photo of this or look it up online, and explore these questions on your own time. But as we wrap up, I'm just going to present a few more pieces of information. Again, from a labor statistics perspective, how do you communicate your humanness, because it is so valuable, in a professional capacity? Well, first, what are the core skills that employers are looking at in 2025 and beyond? And again, this is from the World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs Survey. So we see that not only at the top is analytical thinking, resilience, leadership, creative thinking, motivation and self-awareness, empathy and active listening, technological literacy, curiosity. Are these technical skills? No, they're not technical skills. As a matter of fact, programming, which is a technical skill, is 23rd on the list. Crazy, right? What does this mean? They are looking for skills that fall into the diagram that we just saw, right? So again, here are the skills on the rise: AI and big data, networks and cybersecurity, technological literacy, again, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, etc. So all of these skills are on the rise. But notice, right, down here we have like reading, writing, and mathematics, which are associated with producing like a technically sound output, are not necessarily as on the rise as like curiosity and lifelong learning. But what does it mean for those skills to be on the rise? And this is the final point, right? Thank you all for your patience so far. Fundamental ideas, right? First is show yourself. Pursue personal projects. You've heard this a million times, but it's true, right? But here's the thing, about things you care about. Cursor and similar tools allow you to build like a personal like website easier and faster than ever before. It used to be the case, right? Especially when I was like doing my undergrad without these AI tools, that having your own like custom built website was like a really neat project that was technically sophisticated and you can talk about it. But now it's more of like a baseline. Like, okay, anyone can do that. Well, maybe, well, how can you customize your website to display your needs or your personality, your thoughts? Second, document and discuss your work on platforms like LinkedIn, a personal website, YouTube channel, etc. Meet others is the second point, right? Find places where you can connect with like-minded people, like the DSI Symposium, right? And of course, avoid being transactional. When we talk about networking, we say, well, I got a network, I got to make, I got to give them something and they can give me something. So like, I got a job for you, you got a job for me. Please, right? We need to move past this, especially in the skills that an employer is looking for. They're not looking for you. Of course, they're looking for your critical thinking, like what can you offer versus what can they offer? Sure. But if you just go up to an employer, either digitally or physically, and say, I want a job, right? That shows you're very single-minded. How about starting with why you care, right? What about this product or service actually speaks to you? And again, who knows? Maybe the person sitting beside you could be your future coworker or could help you find a new opportunity. These are wonderful things because, again, you connect with others. That's all I got. Thank you. I believe we're a minute over time. Is that all right? Cool. Anyone have any questions? Great. Oh, go ahead. Sure. Yes.
What exactly is that curriculum like? Is it like technical or is it more like ethical?
Thank you for asking. So it is, I would say it is predominantly technical. However, it has a core component of ethics and various like other like major disciplines. Let me actually pull this up. So MSAIS UF. So the curriculum itself consists of like multiple cores. Oh, perfect. They made a diagram. Oh, this is so great. This didn't used to exist. So if you're interested in the MS and AI systems program at UF, this is what it would look like, where you have like machine learning, AI systems, sensing and analysis, security, and ethics. So again, majority of these things are technical, but again, you have this this very important ethics component, which is great. So machine learning goes into deep learning, and then that's a capstone project, and you have like elective courses across various disciplines. So while the curriculum itself is like it gives you a very strong technical foundation, I went in, of course, with a technical foundation that helped me, but even someone without a technical foundation could like excel in this program. I really believe that, especially with the support of the professors. Like they're really great. There are elective courses that you can use to customize your degree. Yeah, no problem. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi Norman.
Please.
With the masters in AI, like, you know what roles like that you feel like that opens you up to, like research, development?
So this master's program, I will say I'll say this actually, and this connects to the presentation. One piece of advice that I got during my undergraduate career, I suppose, was at a panel from like FANG engineers, right? And I asked like, oh, well, I'm worried about not having enough time to do an internship. Should I do a master's to prolong my time that I'm in school so that I can get an internship? And they said, you should only do a master's if you want to. So why would you want to do a master's? For me, I really wanted to dive into AI systems because I felt that this was actually the first time I had connected with like a field in the iceberg of CS that like I could go on forever like talking about. Specifically the AI safety, ethics, and interpretability aspects. So the precondition for pursuing a degree should be a fundamental interest in this that can keep you motivated when you have to do work that may not be the most exciting. To answer your question, what does it open you up to? Well, this is a master's in science at the master's level. So that could open you up to potential teaching roles. But if you are interested in research, there is a very clear path where you can take this knowledge to either further your education into a PhD where you specialize in a particular area, or you go straight into academia working, or sorry, straight into industry working as an AI scientist or as an AI researcher. Now, it is a trend in the industry that a lot of AI researcher roles are like PhD level, but as more and more programs like this start popping up, and especially if you have enough like projects under your belt, you can very directly convince probably a company that like, okay, fine, I don't have a PhD in this, but I do know a lot, and I have implemented this stuff. So the types of roles are like any extrapolation on these areas. So you might be like if you want to do like algorithmic optimization research, or maybe like fintech. Something like that. If you want to work in quant, maybe you want to be someone developing the type of algorithms they use, that could be a career option for you. Sensing and analysis, that's more like robots and automation, that type of thing. You can do computer vision applications to that. You can do safety applications of that type of thing. So basically any job title that you can extrapolate based off of this, based off of any of these cores, you can do, or take it a step further and do more academia. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Nice. Anyone else? I think. Sure. Yeah.
Source like ALS, like quickly like browser your resume.
Yes.
How do you find out this area when you like you can even like talk to a human, and then like how do you demonstrate your creativity on your resume? Like not necessarily to a human, but like to AI.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent question with regards to demonstrating our humanness. It's actually a very funny thing. There's something that's documented called a reverse Turing test. where a Turing test is designed to provably demonstrate a computer's capacity to appear or sound human, whereas a reverse Turing test is a human's capacity to provably be human. A resume screening, it falls kind of under that category, where these algorithms process like a single page, and they're supposed to extract as much information about you as possible. So there are a few strategies that you can do to there. Make sure that like you can use a checker, like online, there's like websites that have these algorithms. You can upload your resume and see what it outputs. So check as you're developing your resume that it can parse it correctly. Second, you can add links inside of your resume, like in the PDF, to external pages, where if a person is reviewing your stuff, it's very easy for them to access, for example, your personal website. This is something that I do in my resume, right? And that's helped me, for example, like with my creative work, they were actually able to see proof of it. And that's the component that's also associated with it. If you do have a personal project, really try to go through the effort of hosting it somewhere where they don't just have to take your word. Because now you can generate a resume for a particular job role. You can throw a job description into ChatGPT and it can generate the resume for you. So how can they believe you? How can they believe you that you know how to do this? If you have like evidence, if you have like a walkthrough video. So that can help. But demonstrating humanness, and this is the final point, I will get you to your question, thank you, is like, if you can get to an in-person place, that is very valuable because you can speak to someone. They can hear your voice. They can see it in your eyes. They can feel it in the way that you shake their hand, right? About how much you care about what you're doing. So getting in person to some sort of conference like you are, it's very brave and very wonderful that you're here. So keep pursuing opportunities like this. Did I answer your question? Great, awesome. I believe we have time for one more. Sorry. Yeah.
It's on to demonstrate humanity versus the companies to implement systems that encourage.
That's such a excellent question as well, right? Because you bring up a fascinating point where there is an imbalance right now. There's a detectable imbalance between what a company can can provide you with, which is the job opportunity. But right now, that's not enough to just provide the opportunity for employment. As AI systems get more and more sophisticated in producing human seeming content or content that seems human, it does fall on them to have better and more nuanced hiring strategies. So leak code, for example, which is a very hot topic nowadays because of certain developments on LinkedIn and such, where there was an automated way to bypass it, and there was an AI model or LLM doing all the work and then copy pasting into, I don't know how it works. Point is, you could bypass leak code, right? But the premise of leak code, in theory, or at least as it was hopefully implemented, was to give the interviewer a glimpse into your thought processes. So, of course, I hope that any future developments focus on giving the person who is applying more of a chance to demonstrate aspects of their humanity. Will that happen? I can't say with certainty. But what you are in control of is saying, well, you live in a wonderfully complex world outside of a technical interview, right? You have the power to do something to document your humanness. There's a wonderful idea that I would be remiss in not mentioning called the Digital Garden by Maggie Appleton, who is one of my personal inspirations. This is effectively a concept where a personal website is not just showing your work, right? It's showing who you are. It's like an element of design. But if you even go to Maggie's homepage, she has things like essays, opinionated long form narrative writing with an agenda versus notes, right? versus like patterns that she's observed and gathered through her own observations, library, like books that she's read, right? You can subscribe. This is like using technology to advance your connection with someone, right? Documenting how you're involved, this is a strength. And anyone who visits Maggie's website can immediately say, wow, Maggie looks serious about stuff, versus, wow, Maggie has an impressive resume. There's a very big difference between having an impressive resume and being like a human being so captivated with their work that they have chosen to express themselves and their interest beyond just words on paper. Did I answer your question? Cool. Thank you. I believe we are out of time. Thank you very much, everyone.